And then the last tip is to just trust in your abilities, trust that you can do it. And even if you fail, you learn, right? It's like we always learn when we fail. And so it's human nature, and we're not alone. So the beautiful thing is there's support out there too. So seek out support too, to help someone remind you that knows you well, remind you of who you are and how brilliant you are.
The ground beneath our feet may move slowly at an average rate of about 0.6 inches a year, but everything else around us moves pretty fast. In the last year, entrepreneurs and executives have had to change quickly, adjusting to running their businesses as usual during some extremely unusual times. It's been a lot and it's been hard, but in long term, these challenges are likely to make a lot of business owners and executives stronger. Hello and welcome to the Honest Talk by Freak Folks. I'm Harsh Pandey. For this particular session, we have with us very special guest today, Miss Jean Marie Ma'am. She will be joining us today all the way from United States. She's an international keynote speaker, leadership development expert, certified executive coach, and best-selling author. With a body of work and Renaissance leadership and over 25 years of experience across the globe, she helps leaders and their teams shift the way they think, lead, and communicate, rapidly creating a culture of increased trust and collaboration and innovation. She's a master of experimental learning and has a unique ability for asking the questions no one is asking and deeply listening for what's not being said. She has a gift for creating a safe environment where the leaders and their teams find their voice, speak their truth, and resolve conflict swiftly and gracefully. She is a disruptor, a change catalyst, an innovator thinker working with the leader to uncover hidden talent, unlock new ideas, and positively shift the culture so that no talent is left behind. She brings the heart and soul into business and bring back into human. So first of all, ma'am, I welcome you to in this session. Thank you so much for joining and actually agreeing to share your thoughts with us.
Oh, it's my pleasure. It's great to be here. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. It's our pleasure too. So moving to the topic of today's session, which we have chosen is the Renaissance leader. While human potential is higher than ever, the world's advancement presents us with actually more complex problems. Painful gaps exist within the communities and societies that have serious social implications. So my very first request to you, ma'am, please explain to our viewers what do you mean by when you say Renaissance leader?
Yeah, so if we think back at the time of the Renaissance, it was really a time of rebirth. It was a time of invention and innovation. And so if you look at the leaders of that time, there were two things they absolutely did. One was they honored the breadth and depth of talent, because you think about some of the leaders of the time, like Leonardo da Vinci and Michelangelo and the Medicis. They had talents across many different domain areas that were honored. And then the other aspect is they challenged the status quo. So when I say Renaissance leader, what I'm actually referring to is leaders who ask the questions no one is asking. They make new connections where others don't think to make, and they honor the diversity of talent, both breadth and depth of individuals. So those are some of the key aspects of a Renaissance leader when I mention that.
All right, ma'am. Actually, I think you have very beautifully defined this, and I'm sure the people, those who are watching this session, they are also going to find this insightful as well as meaningful. So my next question to you is, or rather it's a kind of a request to you again, ma'am, please explain to our viewers how one can become a Renaissance leader in today's business world.
Yeah, so there's basically, I would say, 3 key skills. And the first one is the skill of curiosity. And, when you think of someone like Leonardo da Vinci, he had this insatiable appetite for curiosity. In fact, the interesting thing is one of the reasons he didn't finish a lot of his paintings that he was commissioned to is because he wanted to keep learning more about the technique. And, it would frustrate people, but he did have this amazing sense of curiosity. That's one of the skills that's important. The other skill is what I would call the skill of having a beginner's mind. Right? Like staying open to new ideas, not being tied to what you already know. So being willing to unlearn. And also the last aspect I would say is around challenging the status quo and to, instead of thinking business as usual, how can we create something new, right? Because we've been in this pandemic, for example, for 2 years now. And so many of us are going, well, when are we going back to normal? And I say there is no back to normal.
Right.
We have an opportunity to create a new future that we want to live into.
Exactly.
So those are some of the skill sets that I teach on how to become more of a Renaissance leader.
This is really great. And I'm sure those who are watching this session, they are actually going to follow these 3 skills. And ma'am, my next question to you is actually, this is a quite sensitive questions we have seen is that everyone experiences imposter syndrome at one point or another. It's that pattern you find yourself in where you doubt your skills, talent, or accomplishments. And it's persistence, you fear being exposed, feeling like folks will find you aren't as brilliant, amazing, and fantastic as you or they thought. So my request to you is please share some tips to deal with imposter syndrome. And it would be great if you could share some of your personal life experiences.
Sure. So I love that you brought this up because it can be a vulnerable topic for people to actually admit, like they've had that feeling before. And it's actually it's what human beings experience. So the beautiful thing is we all go through it. It's not like sometimes we can think we're so alone.
Right.
And, in my personal experience, I can tell you with every big opportunity I've had to take on, I've always had that piece of imposter syndrome, especially right before or as I'm preparing for it, because it's something completely new. And for example, in my career, when I moved out of tech and became the head of design services at the consulting firm I was working at, I didn't know a lot about what that would take. And so it was a scary feeling. It was like, can I do this? Am I up for the task? Will people think I have the skills for it? The same happened when I became the regional business operations manager for the Scandinavian region. It was like going to a new country, covering 3 different countries. It's like all of these big, I would say, accomplishments or big opportunities we have, it will bring up all of that fear. And so a couple of things that help me get through it that listeners will be able to take advantage of too is, one is to remember all the skills and talents that you achieved and that you accumulated all the way up until that point. Because even though you're doing something new, you often have all the skills and talents from something you've already done that you can apply. And then the last tip is to just trust in your abilities, trust that you can do it. And even if you fail, you learn, right? It's like we always learn when we fail. And so it's human nature, and we're not alone. So the beautiful thing is there's support out there too. So seek out support too, to help someone remind you that knows you well, remind you of who you are and how brilliant you are.
Indeed, ma'am. Actually, you have very beautifully defined, and I'm quite impressed from this answer. And the last point which you stressed, that it's okay to fail. I think this is something we all need to understand in this fast-paced changing world. And ma'am, my next question to you is, we have seen the jack of all trades, master of none is a common maxim for leaders spread thin by their interest. Focus or fail is the prevailing career advice, and leaders are repeatedly told that specialization is key to success. But is there any other way to succeed?
So I just love this question because I'm actually going to challenge each of those statements because in my world, and especially in the world of Renaissance leadership, what I talk about is masters of many. So instead of jack of all trades, master of none, we as individuals, so many of us have a breadth of talent and also a depth of talent. So what happens in companies today is we put people in silos, and then we say you need to be an expert here, and then we specialize and we go down really deep in those silos to the point where we get pigeonholed ourselves. And so it's time for us to start honoring and looking across our talent, our people as human beings, and saying, I know you've got other talent that we don't even know about. And so when I say masters of many, it's like, as leaders, our goal is to mine talent and hidden talent as well, because the more we can do that, the more we can have more fulfilled employees, because they're honoring more of their gifts and talents. Now, when you say focus or fail, of course, the first thing that comes to my mind is, my term is focus or learn, because to me, there's no such thing as failure. When we try something new, we produce a result. That result is either something we wanted to have or something we didn't have, we didn't get. So what's there to learn when we don't get what we want, when it didn't go the way we want? So I really don't like the word failure. It has such a negative connotation, but if we can grab the learning from that, now we've got something valuable from it. And then the last aspect, I love that you said specialization is key to success, because I would say decades ago, that was very, very true. Like, our goal in our career was to specialize.
Yes.
What I say today is specialization kills innovation. I use this term in my keynotes called the expert syndrome. It's like, now, first of all, let me backtrack for a moment. Specialization is key in many industries, specifically in specific roles. I will not discount that. That is so, so important. And when we can actually expand that specialization and actually look at the breadth of talent, we start to innovate. Because what happens is, as soon as we become so expert in something, we forget to ask new questions. We don't learn as much as we could because we already know everything about that.
Right.
So it's this counterintuitive way that we really have to step away from and say, okay, wait, maybe I don't know everything about this. What else is there to learn and expand?
Exactly. I think this is something you need to actually, you have whatever you mentioned, it's very hard to disagree with you. A specialization which was applicable in the past 10 years itself may not be applicable today. And we need to actually, the point which you mentioned, that specialization kills innovation, I quite agree with that. And my next question to you is, what values are most important to work you as a leader? How do you handle disagreement with co-workers? Because whenever we have to work with a lot of people, we have to lead them, there are certain kind of conflicts and there are certain kind of disagreements, and which is sometimes quite actually fruitful as well. So how do you define leadership failure also?
Sure. So I would say the top values in my mind of a great leader is, one, the value of curiosity. Because when we're curious, we learn more. We're open to what's available. And a kind of a lead into that is another value, which I would call open-mindedness. When we're open-minded, we value and start to seek out new ways of looking at things. We value and honor people from different cultures, people from different histories and past. Humility is a huge value, I think, of a strong leader. And just remembering that we don't know everything. Right. We're not always the best and the most smartest in the room. And actually, I think some of the brightest leaders often hire people that are smarter than them, that have had more experience than them. The other value is empathy. And I would say this value is so extremely important now more than ever. And finally, I'll say it's being valued now more than ever because of the pandemic, which is a beautiful thing. And the last and almost most important is authenticity. If we're not real, if we're not genuine, if we don't bring all of ourselves, as opposed to faking it or thinking we have to be someone other than who we are, that shows up in our energy. It shows up in how we lead. So those are what I would say the core values. Getting to your second question about disagreement. So this kind of goes along with that concept of failure. It's like when someone disagrees with us, what if we actually just took that disagreement and placed it outside of ourselves? So we depersonalize it. It's like, you have an opinion, I have an opinion. Okay, let's check out those opinions. Not let's check out you and I and make a judgment about you or a judgment about myself because of our ideas. So first tip is depersonalize it. It's like, okay, there's two ideas here. We disagree. That's the reality.
Yes.
Now, the second step is get curious, like ask the other person. So how did you come up with that? Tell me, convince me of why this is the best way to do it, right? So then you give them an opportunity to convince you. You then also have the opportunity to do the same. And what's interesting is when I do this with teams, I put them into pairs in an exercise. And sometimes when I have one person convince the other, they end up believing the other idea in the end, but that's part of it. It's like, we just don't understand why someone may think or feel the way that they do. So stay curious and then look to see, okay, well, wow, now I understand parts of your idea. Maybe we can look at how we could combine them, so bottom line is it's just about more deeply understanding where another person is coming from without judging.
Indeed, ma'am.
And then the last question about leadership failure. Well, I think I answered that before, is that I don't believe failure exists, but if we can continue to learn every time we make mistakes, if you will, then we're becoming a better leader.
Exactly. No, I think you have very beautifully defined all those things. And I'm sure the people who are watching this session, they are also going to find us interesting as well as meaningful. And my next question to you is, actually, we have seen the business world has changed dramatically over the last few decades. And now we live in a connected society where change can be fast-paced, constant, and unpredictable. Rapid advances in technology have created an environment where the internet, smartphones, social media are ubiquitous. And the 2008 global financial crisis and this 2020-2019 pandemic has increased the sense of turbulence, danger, and unpredictability in the certain areas. So my question to you is, in your opinion, what critical skills required to excel in this fast-paced changing world? And what are some tips would you like to give to young leaders? I'm sure you have defined certain type of skills in your previous answers, but to be specific, what are the critical skills needed in this fast-paced changing world?
Yes, great question. I think that what we've gone through in the last 2 years has forced all of us to look at things differently. And, when you think of even the great resignation that's happening, it's like there's a reason that's happening. Where can we find and be fulfilled and honor all of our gifts and talents in an organization that values us? And so I would say, in this fast-paced changing world of uncertainty, there's probably 3 core skills that are necessary. One is, and I mentioned it before, staying open-mindedness. It's not easy to be in that place, but the skill of curiosity, awareness helps us get there. So that's kind of the second core skill of what I would say curiosity and self-awareness, which points to a term you may know and understand is emotional intelligence. It's like being able to recognize in ourselves, oh, I'm thinking this way, or I'm judging that other person, or I'm really triggered by what they just said. Let me see if I can take a look at this. What's actually there for me? That's what emotional intelligence is, and having a sense of self-awareness that allows yourself to stop in that moment and say, something's not right here. Let me get back to you when I'm in a better place, kind of thing. The last skill, which I would say is the most critical, which has been highlighted in the last 2 years, is agility. And when I say agility, I mean being willing to shift in the moment, staying flexible, because the reality is, we could, from a new virus coming into our company, losing half its revenue, to we're hiring 100 new people. I mean, the change can be great or not so great, but how we actually respond to that change is everything. So the skill of agility is really critical. And it's sort of a skill that it's like flying a plane. The only way you get better is, obviously you're practicing in the simulations and all that, but you just got to keep flying. And it's the same with agility. The more situations and challenges that you can navigate through, the better you get at just dealing with them when they come up and not letting it be a big deal. A couple of tips I would leave the listeners with, especially for new leaders, is ask powerful questions. And when I say that, so I'm a little obsessed with questions. That's why I ended up writing a book about questions, because it's how I think. Like, even in interviews like this, I always think, or when I'm writing marketing copy, or I'm writing a keynote speech, or I'm doing training, it's like, I'm always driven by the outline is usually a set of questions. What do they need to learn? What do they want to get out of that? What experience do I want them to have? And so as leaders, and especially new leaders, one of the tips I share in my training is a powerful question typically starts with the words what or how. Now, I'm not saying other types of questions aren't powerful. It's just that a what or how question opens up the dialogue. It deepens the learning. It forwards the action. Why questions, which a lot of us ask either ourselves or to another. Why didn't you do it that way? Why are you doing that? Why did you show up late? They're not empowering. They put the other person on the defense. Now, there is some why questions that are important, like, why is that important to you? That's a powerful question. So if we can start shifting the way we dialogue and ask more what or how questions, especially when we want to go into direct mode as a leader, it's amazing what happens in the dialogue. People on your team want to think for themselves. They want to feel seen, heard, and understood. That is a human core need. So if we as leaders can ask more questions, we get that beautiful balance. And then the other tip that goes along with this is notice how much you're speaking versus listening, especially as a new leader, because we think we have to impress, we think we have to direct, we got to tell people what to do. But actually, what's more powerful is to ask those questions, to listen for the answers, listen for what's not being heard. And then you deepen that dialogue. And in the end, like in one of my trainings, I have an exercise where they actually have to solve a challenge by only asking questions. And it's amazing. It can happen. And so it sparks people's innovation, thinking, and it makes them happier on the job because they are owning it versus the leader telling them what to do, like the command and control.
Right, ma'am. Actually, you have mentioned some of the very key skills needed in this fast-paced changing world of innovation. And thank you so much for giving your important time. It was a kind of a healthy conversation with you on the topic. We look forward to conduct more sessions with you in future. And again, thank you, ma'am. Thank you for your time.
Very welcome. It's my pleasure.
It was my pleasure. Lovely talking to you, ma'am. Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.
On the ground is where I stand. Never give up, that was always the plan. It's so cold outside. I'm alone, I'm alright. It's so cold outside. I'm alone.